Okay, today we're going to start on 21a, Chaf Aleph, Amud Aleph, at the Mishnah on the bottom. Good. We think Hashem. You see, there's some bolder letters that are. Yeah, Masni. That means a Mishnah. The Aramaic Taf exchanged for Shin. Hebrew Mishnah. Masni. Okay, we thank Hashem that you're able to learn Torah every day. It's less of a learning. We should have a basic Mikdash. Learning for Shleima, for everyone that needs. Father, for Naftali. Naftali ben Menucha Bela. Levi ben Miriam Adel. Miriam Adel.
Miriam what?
Adel. Okay. Another Shesiyan Kalayim. Another that was drinking wine all day, ain't chayiv alachas. He's only going to be chayiv one malka. Another is someone that's not allowed to become contaminated. He can't drink wine. Right? He has to let his hair grow. Anyway, he's drinking wine all day, but he was warned once, and he gets only one lashes, even though he drank a lot of wine. As machlekes, why it's only one lashes? One opinion is that it's because the first cup that he drank was close to the warning. The cups that he drank later were too distant from the warning for him to get lashes for that, because to be warned and perform the act. Other opinion is that no, he was warned and all the cups are included in that warning. The only thing is there was no separation between them, so it's all considered one cup. That's two different approaches.
Well, one time, he being intoxicated, he wouldn't know what the difference.
Yeah. Saying that because he was drunk after the first cup. They're saying not necessarily did he get drunk because it was grape juice. Amrullah, let's say they said al tishta. So they warned him twice. Said, don't drink, several times throughout the day. So and he still drinks each time. So chayav al kalachas v'achas is chayav for each and every time that he drank the wine, because the separate warnings make him chayav for each one. Let's say he's, the nazir is also not allowed to go into the cemetery. So let's say he goes into the cemetery, goes again into the cemetery, goes again. Ein chayav al achas. It's only chayav once. Amrullah al tatame. Let's say they warned him each time, but and he still does it. Chayav al kalachas v'achas. Then it's going to be chayav for each and every time. Exactly the same story, just instead of the wine, now it's the cemetery. Right. It's, let's say he was cutting his hair all day. So in chayav al achas, it's only chayav once. After the first warning is chayav. Once for all of that. Amrullah al tegalech. Let's say they warned him, don't shave. And he's still cutting his hair for each time. So chayav al kalachas v'achas is chayav for each one. Okay, all of those were the prohibitions of the nazir.
Well, I think the tumah is different. Yes, the coin and they clean and they all shaved up, right?
That's not. We're just discussing the lashes. Let's say he's wearing shatnez, woolen linen, garments of woolen linen. Now, it doesn't have to be a nazir. It could be talking about a regular person. So kolayim, the entire day, ein chayav al achas is only chayav once. One warning in the morning. They told him, don't wear that jacket. I don't care. He wears the jacket, has shatnez in it. So he's going to be chayav one lashes. Amrullah al tilbash. If they warn them, don't wear it. Don't wear it. Every time they warn them a bunch of times. And he takes it off and puts it on. And so chayav al kalachas bachs. Every time he takes it off and puts it on, it's going to be chayav again. Yeah, we're not saying that he's not violating a prohibition. We're saying that the punishment that the court can give is only together with a warning. So each warning can only occur one. Because we're talking about a bunch of prohibitions, lashes for how many times and all of this. So the Mishnah now tells me something quite interesting. Person could be plowing one furrow, one row in his field, and he violates 8 prohibitions just with that one movement of the plow. It's 8 prohibitions. Let's take a look. Well, he was plowing with an ox and a donkey. You know the rule that you can't use an ox and a donkey together when the plow. You have to have only the same animal. Okay. And yeah, I turn the page on the top of the page. Line 2. And they are consecrated. We're still in the Mishnah. I turn the page only in the Hebrew.
Still on the shaving, or where? In
the next case. They're consecrated. Now, what's consecrated over here? So I have an ox and a donkey. So there are different ways of learning this Mishnah. One way of learning it, the Rivan, he says that they're both consecrated, and there's actually 2 prohibitions. The ox is holy because it's a sacrifice, and you're using it for plowing. And the donkey is also holy because it was the firstborn donkey that's supposed to be exchanged for the sheep, and it wasn't exchanged. And both of those cannot be used for work. So prohibition number 1 was that they were mixed, that they were being plowed together. Prohibition number 2 and 3 is that both of those were consecrated. That's the way the Rivan learns. Yeah. Now it's not so clear that this is how you have to learn, that the donkey goes under that prohibition that you can't work it. So the Rivan adjusts it, that he says we're not necessarily talking about a donkey. Could be talking about an ox and a sheep. Why do we say donkey? Well, that was just a classical example of 2 animals that can't be used together in the plow. But it could be any other animal that's in it.
Put it in the mizbeach, the donkey.
Cannot. So we had to figure out a way that there would be a consecration of the donkey, where, as we said, we're talking about the Bukhar, but that's not so simple because that's a machlaikas. Okay, that's one interpretation. The Rivan, he gives one interpretation that there are 2 prohibitions in this, is the Rivan, and he says that there's 2 possibilities. On the other hand, there is another possibility here, is that we're actually talking about only 1 prohibition. It's only the shar. Now we have to come up with how do we get 8? Because according to the Rivan, number 1 was the plowing with the 2 together. The Hein Makdashin is number 2 and 3. According to Taisvis, he learns this that it's just number 1, and then Hein Makdashin is number 2. We'll have to see. Klayim Bekerem. And also, another prohibition here is that the area that he was plowing was Klayim. It was a mixed vineyard, mixed seeds in the vineyard. Now, this could be 1 prohibition or 2 prohibitions. So, of course, the Rivan is going to learn it that it's 1. Taisvis is going to learn that it's 2, because Taisvis needs to make up for the missing prohibition that he got with the one right before. We need at the end a total number of 8. So we're at this point we're holding by 4. The question is is it 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 go together?
That is happened to be that at that moment you have the mixture.
So yeah, as he's plowing now, how's it possible that it's 1 prohibition, 2 prohibitions? It depends how you want to read this. You could read it Kalayim Bekerem, that I have a mixture of grains, and those grains happen to be in the vineyard, which means you're not allowed to plant grains together. You're not allowed to plant grains in a vineyard. That's two prohibitions. Or it could be a mixture in a vineyard, that it's grain in a vineyard, and it's just one prohibition. You're not allowed to plant grain in a vineyard. How do you want to read the kalayim, the kerem? Yeah, is it two prohibitions going on, or is it one prohibition? Okay, B'Shvius, it turns out that when he was plowing, turned out to be the Shemitah year. So you're not allowed to plow in the Shemitah. Okay, you be Yom Tov, and it turns out he was plowing on Yom Tov. You're not allowed to plow on Yom Tov.
It's one of the melacha.
Right.
I was wondering, when they do different animals, is also called kalayim, or
it is called kalayim, but that's not what we're referring to. That's when they're being mated.
So does it have it, like in this case, if they make them work together, does it have a specific name?
I'm not sure.
Kalayim Bachram is number 3.
No, that's number 4. It looks like number 3, but it's actually. And Yom Tov, it's on Yom Tov. And it turns out that the person was a Kayin, and the person is a Nazir, and all of this was being plowed in a cemetery. So if Kalayim Kerem is number 4, Shvius is number 5, Yom Tov is number 6, Kayin and Nazir 7 and 8. And that's our story. Kayin and a Nazir, both of them are not allowed to become impure. So that would be 7 and 8. Hananya ben Chachinai Yaimer. He's in Pirkei Avos. Which chapter is he? Hanei or Balayla? What is he? Right? That's Daniel. He's the one that's up. He says that someone that's up at night wastes his time from Torah study. Anyway, he says Afalevish Kalayim. Even someone that's wearing Kalayim. So we can add in another prohibition here. While he's doing this, he's wearing his jacket has woolen linen in it. Okay, anyway, the sages say, shame. That's not what we're talking about. Throwing on other prohibitions. We're talking about the plowing. Amar lahem. So he responds back. He says, Afanazar, and which means Afanazar and the Kayan, Leyo Hashem. That's not the part of the prohibition. The prohibition we were talking about was that he was plowing. You're mixing in other things that he happens to be a Kayan. I want to know how many prohibitions you get with that one pull of the plow. How many prohibitions there? That's the question. Okay. Amar
to the ground, to the melacha that he's doing.
Right, exactly. That more
the clothes
more
he's wearing is outside.
Exactly. Amar Bibi, Amar Yosef. Bibi. There's different versions to this Gemara. Some say it's Amar Bibi, Amar Ravasi. Paishet. Oh, it's supposed to be loy paishet, the leivish mamish. Ella afilo doesn't mean that he's actually taking off. Ella afilo machnes amaitzi beis yadum klishla. Even if he just takes his sleeve, one hand out of his sleeve and puts it back in, that would also be considered another prohibition. Doesn't have to actually remove the entire garment. Just takes his sleeve out, his arm out of the sleeve, and puts it back in. That would be a new prohibition. Well, machvi ravacha breder rav ika yuli vafukes. It's interesting. Ravacha breder rav ika says no. It has to be that you take the entire thing off and put it back on. Yuli vafuk means to go in and to go out. Ravashi amar afilu leishalak they lifted belovishchayv. Ravashi says no. We're talking about he's wearing kalayim.
Oh.
And does he have to take off the whole thing and put it back on for it to be another prohibition? Or even if he takes his sleeve out, one arm out of his sleeve, would that be a new prohibition? Well, we should get a second set of malchus just for doing it. So
the clothes is still on him.
Yeah. And now Ravashi says that you don't need any of that. Ravashi says it's just the amount of time that it takes to take it off and put it on. If you wear it for that duration, that incurs another set of malchus. Doesn't have to be that you're actually literally taking it off. It's just the time that you're wearing it. If you're warned again, hey, the jacket that you have on is shatnez, and you were wearing it for enough time to take it off and put it on, so that's a new prohibition.
But then, what happens? I mean, the person, the rabbi can check that the shatnez, know that it has shatnez.
Right. Or in the olden days, we don't know anything, but in the olden days they could see a garment, they knew what it was. We could polyester and this and that. And also, we don't make things. We don't.
It's different.
When you make it, you know what when you look at it, you know what it is. Like the tailor knows what it is. We don't know what it is because we're ignorant. Yeah. Said that someone can plow one furrow, and he could get a bunch of prohibitions of Malkus, 8. Rav Yanai says, "Bechabura nimnu v'gam." Rav Yanai is the teacher of Rabbi Yochanan. He says that in the group we were sitting and we decided that if someone covers seeds of mixed seeds with dirt, the seeds are in the ground already. He just covers the two seeds that are in outside of Israel. The prohibition of mixing seeds is really just grafting, but in Israel,
it's only theory.
The grafting, taking a tree and putting it together to branch on the tree. But in Israel, even the vegetables need to be separated. The grains need to be separated. So, if there's 2 seeds in the ground and someone covers the 2 with dirt, that's considered kalayim. He gets malchus. Amalam Rabbi Yochanan, this is our Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yana, you're telling me a chiddush? I know it, and take a look at our Mishnah. Someone there's a possibility that someone can plow a field and he can violate 8 prohibitions, that he gets 8 times lashes. What are those? First of all, plowing with an ox and a donkey. They're consecrated, right? They're sanctified. And it's also a mixed grains in a vineyard. Hi, chayrish. He's plowing. The mechayev mishum kalayim mechem mishkachasla. What do you mean he's plowing? How does that considered planting kalayim? He's plowing, not planting. Lav the mechse b'adei dazel. It must be that the plow is when it's going through the dirt, it's actually moving the dirt over the seeds. There's different types of plowing. You could plow before you plant, and you can plow after you plant. After you plant, what the plow would do, which the plow would, if you make the furrow and then you put you put it in again, it will cover it. The plow will now cover the seeds instead of making the hole. So, what he's doing here is this plow is not making the hole. This plow is covering the seeds. So Rabbi Yochanan tells Rabbi Yanai, it says in our Mishnah that covering the seeds is the prohibition. So, Amalei, Rabbi Yanai responds, Ilav did aloyla chaspa mishkachas marganisa, to say, if I didn't lift up the pottery shard, would you have found the pearl that was underneath it? As I said the rule, and then you were able to see that rule was in the Mishnah. If I didn't tell you that rule, you wouldn't have noticed that the Mishnah was telling you that chiddush. Okay. Amalei Rish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Rish Lakish, a friend of Rabbi Yochanan, he says, Ilav, is a brother-in-law also. Ilav the kilsach gavarabif. Rabbi Yanai didn't praise you. Havamina mastismani Rabbi Kiva. I would have said a totally different shot in the Mishnah. I would have said that the Tanya, I would have said Amar Amakayim Kalayim like it. Not because you're considered planting, consider that you're allowing it to continue to grow. Even Makayim is see, when it comes to forbidden mixtures that are planted, is the prohibition just to plant it, or is the prohibition even to sustain it, to let it continue to grow? Or do you have to pull it out?
You put water in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so.
No, 1 second. We're talking about mixed seeds. Okay. We don't have this outside of Israel unless it's a grafted tree. But if you have a grafted tree in your yard, are you allowed to water it? Are you allowed to sustain it? You have to let it die or just, abandon it. Maybe you have to even pull it out. So Rabbi Kiva says, Mekayim Kalayim like it. That I don't have to say that you're actually violating the planting of it, the Zayreya. No. Just say that you're that you're letting it exist. My Rebbe Kiva, where's Rebbe Kiva say this? The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Menachesh, someone that weeds a field, a mechape bekalayim, and he covers over kalayim like a. Okay, it's Malkus. Rabbi Kiva and Rafa Makayim. Rabbi Kiva says even if you just let it exist, that's already a prohibition.
That exists.
My time with Rabbi Kiva. What's the reason for Rabbi Akiva to maintain it? Not even if you're not planting it. What's the reason for Rabbi Akiva? Well, he has a pasuk. Tanya was taught in a brisa. Sadcha le'sisr kalayim. Your field you can't plant mixed grains. Ainli elazirah would only know the prohibition is to plant. Mekayim, let it continue to exist. How do you know that that's also a prohibition? Which would mean the way the commentaries learn this brisa, the previous brisa, is that when we said that if you're weeding in the field of kalayim, you're helping sustain the kalayim, sustaining it. Then you're helping it sustain it. That right. So that's the prohibition. The weeding of it, taking out the weeds around it so that it should be able to grow better, is the prohibition according to Rabbi Akiva. In other words, it's all one opinion. It's Rabbi Akiva that was saying Afa Makayim means the af is a funny word. Even he wants to say that even if it's not planting, it's just sustaining it is the prohibition.
So the right is die.
Right.
Huh?
Exactly. So he says, how do we know that that's also prohibition? Talmud Lema, the pasuk says, your animal you shall not breed kalayim, can't mix a crossbreed, and also your field you shouldn't plant kalayim. Now the way he reads it is he stops the comma is supposed to go after kalayim, comma. Kalayim. Your field can't plant kalayim. What he does is kalayim sadcha loy. Kalayim in your field not. Which means you can't even let it. You can't even sustain it.
Boy plants that is prohibited. Can bear fruit.
Yeah, you're allowed to eat the fruit. Yeah,
But
unless it's a
we cannot
vineyard.
plant it
Unless it's a
either.
vineyard, right?
We cannot plant it anymore.
Right. In a vineyard, you can't eat it either. But that's the stricter law. Amalei Ula Rav Nachman. Ula says to Rav Nachman, 1 second. We if there's a prohibition over here of plowing, and there's also a prohibition of planting because we're saying that you're covering the seeds while you're so then on Yom Tov, we said he was doing this on Yom Tov. But we only counted it as one prohibition on Yom Tov. We said the plowing is plowing, you're not allowed to plow on Yom Tov. Really, that should be 2 prohibitions because you're not allowed to plow on Yom Tov, you're also not allowed to plant on Yom Tov. So we just added another prohibition here. Amalei, Tanavashaya. Reb Nachman says, yeah, the Tana wasn't precise. It left out it wasn't giving you every single one. It was just giving you a bunch of them. It left out. Amalei. So Ula says back to Reb Nachman, Tana Katani Shmeina. The Tana, the author of our Mishnah, he wrote that there's 8 prohibitions. Ba'at Amrit Tana V'Shaya, and you say that he left out one. If he didn't count, he didn't give it a number, so then you could say, okay, he was listing all of them, but he didn't list all of them. When he gives you a number, you can't say that the number isn't precise. He gave you a number to tell you the number. That's what the purpose. Amar Rava, or maybe it's Rabba. Who's this Gimel? Amalei Rabba. So Rabba says, is it Amar Lei? Yeah, Amar Lei Rabba. It's Rabba. That's why, because if you're adding in the word lay, it means he's saying to him, Rava wouldn't have spoken to Rav Nachman and to Ula. Rabba is a generation earlier. He would speak. Yeah. He says, Yesh chilek malachas b'Shabbos vein chilek malachas b'Yom Tov. This is a very interesting thing. We have sources that when it says there's 39 prohibitions on Shabbos, we have sources, possibly 2 different sources, that tell us that if someone violates each one of those, he gets a separate prohibition for each one that he violates. It would be different sacrifice he has to bring. Basically, it's possible to bring 39 sacrifices on one Shabbos, because he violated each. However, what Rab is saying is that that source only applies to Shabbos, doesn't apply to Yom. Those sources that we have. So therefore, if someone does a lot of malachas on Yom Tov, even though they're different categories, but on Yom Tov he'll only get one prohibition. He violated Yom Tov, not violated the plowing on Yom Tov, the sowing on Yom Tov. He doesn't get divided like that. That's the chiddush. Shabbos is separate. Yeah. Amalei, he says to him, Adatehei. Like let it stay here. Like this is Adah. On this it should be. Means he gave a good teretz. Isvei Abaya. Abaya is a student of Rabbah. Abaya says, 1 second. Bein chiluk malachas b'Yom Tov. You don't have separate prohibitions on Yom Tov. Says what's nan, but we learned in the Mishnah, Mavashal gid b'chalav b'Yom Tov. Someone cooks the gid hanasha, the sciatic nerve.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to eat it. Now, yeah, and he cooks it together with milk.
Wow.
Gid hanasha. Gid hanasha. And he cooks it with milk, and he cooks it on Yom Tov. So far there's only 2 prohibitions of cooking. However, but then he eats it. So he cooked milk and meat, and he cooked on Yom Tov. You're allowed to cook on Yom Tov, but only if it's necessary. Only if it's necessary for food, not for just to waste. And here he can't eat it, so it's not necessary for food. And then he eats it. So
benefit, no?
There's no benefit because
we didn't say that there's benefit. What benefit did he get?
Right. You're not allowed to eat it.
Oh, so 1 second. And then he eats it. So that would go under the prohibition of eating. Benefit would be if you gave it to your animal. That would go under another prohibition. It has all 3, but you don't violate the benefit when you're eating.
Eating is basically
it's
you
eating.
give it to someone else.
Yeah, the benefit is okay. So now the Gemara elaborates. It says he gets 5 times malchus. Like a mishum Michael gid. First of all, he ate the gid anasha. Okay, that's 1. Like a mishum bavashal b'Yom Tov shleilu tzorech. Number 2 is he's cooking on Yom Tov even if it's not necessary, because it wasn't necessary for food. But like a mishum that's number 2. Like a mishum bavashal gid b'chalav. There's also another prohibition: is he cooked milk and meat. Number 4, like a mishum Michael bas b'chalav. He's eating milk and meat. Number 5. Like a mishum avara, and there's a prohibition because he started the fire. How did he cook it? He had to start a fire. You want to just put this on the chair so I can.
You can do it, but it exists.
Yeah, he didn't have an existing flame. He didn't have his yahrzeit candle.
So careful.
Okay, so if according to this, Abaya's question, strong question. If according to you, you say that on Yom Tov there's only 1 prohibition of do not violate Yom Tov. And all the prohibitions, all 39 malachas of Shabbos all go under 1 category on Yom Tov. So then how could you divide it into 2 of cooking and starting a fire? How could he be chayiv 2? He already said he violates Yom Tov for cooking. And all the malachas of Yom Tov are all combined into 1. It must be, the fact that there's 5, it must be that on Yom Tov you divide the malachas into the separate 39 malachas. That's the case. Our question comes back. Why are there only 8 prohibitions when the person was plowing the field? There should be 9 prohibitions because the plowing it was also covering the seeds, which is considered planting. Well, he answers, he says, says what we can do is we can take out Havara, which is a Yom Tov prohibition, making a fire on Yom Tov, and we can say that the Gid Hanasha was a non-kosher animal. So we got another prohibition. It had nothing to do with Yom Tov. We can't extend prohibitions in Yom Tov because there's only 1 prohibition that covers them all, or like 1 umbrella prohibition. We said that we're dealing with the prohibition of eating non-kosher food.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to non-kosher animal.
How do you know that? Here we're saying that it does. Huh? That's okay.
But isn't it also like a different action? He lit the fire and then he cooked.
Yeah,
Then
but
he put
also
the food on.
Also, eating it is a different action. Over here, we're
Yeah.
not saying that it's one action. It's slightly different than what we were discussing in the Mishnah. The Mishnah was like one pull, and you violate all of those. Here, we're saying you're going to get a bunch of laughs if you do this activity, these activities.
Because the animal itself, you're not allowed to eat it.
Right.
So what difference does it make with
Oh, no, not that it wasn't a non-kosher animal. It was the animal was kosher, but the animal wasn't shechted. Yeah. Sorry, you had a question?
Why would they think about this like so far-fetched thing of like just like one prohibition for all laws, just to prove like helpless? I don't know, to me, it seems like everything wild, like, just one prohibition for all the other laws. When we know from Shabbos that
Yes.
each
Oh,
thing is different.
so you're asking why is it? So it turns out that the only way we know from Shabbos to divide up the malachas is because we have a source. Once the pasuk says, "Shall not light a fire on Shabbos." One opinion. So the Gemara asks, Brisa, it's a Mishnah. It says, why do we need that? It says you can't do work. Lighting a fire is one of the works. One of the opinions is that the fact that it says you can't light a fire is coming to teach me that just like this is an independent prohibition, so too each one of the malachas is also an independent prohibition. That was only the Yom HaShabbos. It doesn't say that by Yom Tov. Okay, so you see it by Yom Tov, you don't have that. Then there was another source. It's Ba'asa Achas Mehena. So, and he does one of these, and the Gemara learns he does one of these. It's coming to teach me that any one of them would be, but that's only if it's going to be karis and chatas. Karis if he does it b'mezid, and the chatas if he does it b'shegi, intentionally and unintentionally. But because on Yom Tif there's no karis and chatas, so that pasuk l'sachach mehin doesn't apply to Yom Tif. So whatever the source is that divides it up doesn't fit with him. Yeah, that's the Rivan spells that out. Okay. Problem is with this new answer that we have some of the prohibitions here in this the five prohibitions. Some of them are involved the cooking, some of them involve the eating. But what's the ratio? What is it? 2 to 3? What's exactly going on? So now what we have is eating geda nasha, eating basa b'chalav, and eating nevela. And then I have 2 more in the cooking. I have cooking on Yom Tif, and I have cooking basa b'chalav. Now that I cooked the milk, that's the 5. 3 eating, 2 cooking. Problem is, but Tani Reb Chia says like Ishtayim alachilase. Reb Chia taught on this. He says that 2 of them are of the prohibitions here are eating, and 3 of them are shalish al bishul, and 3 of them are on the cooking. Now, the reason how we got 3 on the cooking was because we were assuming it would fit better if we would say that you're not allowed to cook it, and you're also not allowed to start the fire, because that's part of the cooking. And that's how we have 3. You can't cook milk and meat. You can't cook on Yom Tov if it's not necessary for food, and you can't start a fire. So Reb Chia should have divided it up differently, not 3 and 2, but 2 and 3. Okay. What we're going to have to do is not put in another prohibition of eating, another eating prohibition, because we need it to fit Reb Chia's division of 2 to 3, 2 on the eating and 3 on the cooking. So we're going to need to replace the cooking, the starting the fire on Yom Tov, and we're going to add in another prohibition here of Atzi Asherah, of wood that came from a tree that was an Avodah Zarah, and you weren't allowed to use that wood. So now you just had benefit from things that you were supposed to destroy and not have benefit from. So that's your new prohibition here to complete the 5. And the prohibition it says in the verse, you can't take anything from what's prohibited to use. Rava's son says to Ravashi, maybe there should be now a prohibition. You're not allowed to bring this idol into your house. And it must be, we need a different interpretation. You used wood of hekdesh. Someone had consecrated his tree, and you're using it for personal use. That wood, you weren't allowed to do that. Hekdesh must not mean.
The wood is the tree is considered an item.
No, before we were talking about that the tree was the wood was from idol, and you weren't allowed to have benefit from that. Now we're saying that the wood actually is a tree from the Beis Hamikdash, or it's considered consecrated. And now we're saying that you're not allowed to destroy things that are consecrated. Only destroy, yeah. But what's the prohibition of that? So that the person would get lashes. I'm talking about if he has to pay them back, But they would get lashes. So that's because it says that you should destroy the idols, but you shouldn't do this to God. Okay. Siman Shanboy Shnaz. This siman is a mnemonic for the names of the sages, which are going to be asking us questions. Maskefla Rab Hoshia. The first shin is Rab Hoshia. We don't count the hay. Maybe we can throw in another prohibition over here. That where was he plowing? I think we're going back to our Mishnah. Going back to the Mishnah where he had 8 prohibitions plowing. Maybe the place that he's plowing is the place where they did an egla arufa. The egla arufa is the animal. They broke the back of the neck because they found the corpse in between cities, and the elders come, and so that valley is not allowed to be plowed. Comes along this guy and plows there. So that cemetery, that's also a vineyard. That's also all of those prohibitions that we had. It happens to be, but guess what? It's also a nachal esan. It's also that valley that's not allowed to be plowed. Okay, we could have made a 9th prohibition. Rav Chanina has a question. Maybe he's erasing the name of Hashem while he's walking. And should erase the name of the idols, but you shall not do this to God. You're not allowed to erase the name of it. Okay, Rabavo has a question. Maybe while he's plowing, the plow is also going over a part of his body that has on it a spot of leprosy, and it's also scraping off that spot. And it says you're not allowed to cut off a spot of leprosy. Okay.
Already dead.
No, he's talking about that the person that's plowing that has 8 prohibitions is doing another one while he's plowing. And the plow is cutting off part of his has a piece of leprosy. There's some leprosy on his toe. Maskefla Baya. Baya says, I wonder how they explain this. Maybe it's the Kohen Gadol that's doing this, and he has who's wearing the cheshen, the breastplate, and it says the breastplate should not be dislodged from the apron, and maybe it's getting dislodged while he's doing this. How do they explain the Badei Aaron? Mishnah could have stated that he violated both of these prohibitions while plowing, thereby incurring 2 additional. Which way does this go? This way? Yeah. 2 additional Makkos Daf. So how is he doing it? So the plow, with the plow made from the wood. No, whoa. The plower detached the breastplate, donned it, and then plowed while wearing it, and also removed the ark's poles and plowed with them. Although he violates prohibition against loosening the breastplate and removing the ark's poles before beginning the plow, these violations actively continue while he plows for as long as he refrains from returning these items. Okay. All right. It's another possibility. Maskefla Ravashi. Rashi has a question. Maybe he's using idolatrous tree. Sorry. Oh. Idolatrous tree, and he's not allowed to benefit from it. The prohibition is from here. You're not supposed to take anything from the prohibited things. This is a more realistic one. Maybe while he's plowing, he's knocking down a fruit tree. Not let it cut down fruit trees. Amalei Rab Zira le Rabmani. Rab Zira says to Rabmani, that's a good question. He says, you want to get another prohibition in here? He could take a vow that he's never going to plow on Yom Tov. Now he's violating his vow. It says, Hasam like a chalash shvua. He responds, he says, but that's not a good oath. That's not a good oath. Because because he already swore by Har Sinai that he's not gonna violate the Torah. You can't take an oath on another oath. He already swore. It was
especially when it's a high oath.
Right. Amalei, so he responds, he says, he says, I'm never gonna plow. Now, the migu, that just as the chala ala shvua b'chol, that the vow, that the oath takes effect on the weekday, then it's like it sneaks in and it also applies on Yom Tov as well. Chala nam Yom Tov. So he responds to this. He figured out a way that there could be a prohibition of violating another prohibition. He says, "Midi isibit shila lektani," because he could get out of it by annulling it, by going to a sage and annulling the oath. So that's not. We weren't talking about those types of cases. It says, "V'la, you're not talking about those types of cases. Very hektish, b'bechar, very nazir." Very hektish. You have to. The answer is b'chak. What about hektish? Hektish, you can take when you consecrate something, you can also deconsecrate it by going to the rabbi and saying that I regret what I consecrated. I'd like to remove it, annul the consecration. Yeah, more psachim. Apparently, it says b'bechar. We're talking about a firstborn. Firstborn. It's not you that consecrated it. It was born. You can't annul that. But a nazir, what about the nazir? The nazir that takes the vow that he's going to be a nazir, he can annul that as well. It says benazir shimshon, type of vow is taken by the parents when he's born, so that cannot be annulled. It says no, you're stretching it because nazir shimshon bar timur lemesimu. Nazir, if someone has such a type of nazirus of shimshon, that type of nazirus allows him, he can't drink wine and cut his hair, but he's allowed to go to the cemetery. So this one of the prohibitions there was that he was in the cemetery. So this Nazir Shimshon is allowed to go to the cemeteries. We see Shimshon was killing people and all of that stuff. Ella Haitana Isser Kaila Leslie. Rather, what we're saying over here is that we don't have the Isser Kaila. That means we don't add on a prohibition just because it's being included in a general thing. So that vow that he was taken, that for the rest of the days, for all days, he's not going to do this, and therefore it automatically goes over on Yom Tov. So that he's not going to say.
It seems like all of these are ben adam makom, right? Because you could add a bunch of ben adam chavero was stolen. He killed somebody while he was doing it.
Yeah, you would have to get a lashes in there though.
Oh,
so that the lashes are usually by the ben adam lamake. Other things is just like you have to pay or whatever. Amar Vaishya. Vaishya says, "A new halacha." It says if someone mates an ox that used to be a sacrifice, that's now not a sacrifice, but you still have restrictions on what you're allowed to do with it. You can't work it, and you can't use its milk. You can't share the wool. There's certain prohibitions. One of them is also that you can't mate this animal with another animal. He's saying that you actually get two prohibitions. First of all, you crossbreed. It's a crossbreed because even though it was an ox, but because it was holy, it was something that's not holy. We're considering that a different species. Big chiddush.
When you do it, then you just let it live.
You can shecht it and eat it. Yeah, the holiness is not on it. You're allowed to eat it. It's allowed to become impure, but there are certain restrictions that still apply.
That would be to steal it, right?
No, it now actually does belong to you, but there's certain restrictions on it that don't allow you, even though it belongs to you, there's certain restrictions. Amar Rab Yitzchak Hamanik b'Shar B'Shalom Mikdashim Leikish Shrei Gufechadu V'Asa Kasuk Shnei Gufim. You would have a similar prohibition that if someone takes this animal and attaches it to a harness together with another animal and pull it, so that would also be considered two separate types of animals there because one's holy and one's mundane. It's big chiddush. Okay, let's leave it over here. Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the one you said, Rabbi Chanina ben Hachinai. That's the Aner Balayla.
Yeah.
And I just sent you something about that last night. When you asked, I sent you something about what I'm working on.
Oh yeah.
That's Rabbi Nachman quotes that. That's the very big thing for Rabbi Nachman. In chapter Torah 52, Nun Beis, he has this whole thing about Aner Balayla. The whole world is created for this person. It's like it's like a meditation. He's about to do this all based on that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Beautiful.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
Have a great day.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
All right. I seem to have lost SB's W-2 form. I think you sent it to me, didn't you?
I'm not sure. I know she needed to do it, but I don't know if she actually gave it to me. Let me find out. That would explain.
I thought I had it, but I was looking for it. I couldn't find it, so I don't know.
Let me check in my. I'll check in my files. If she gave it to me, I would have a picture of it. Let me see if I have it.
Okay.
And then if not, I'll have to get it.
Okay. No problem.
We'll find it.
Thank you.
How does it work? Why is it such a big deal? The school, the workplace doesn't have it on record, or
What?
is it difficult to get another one if she lost it?
No.
Okay.
All she has to do is call where she works from.
Okay.
Where did she work?
He worked in LEC in the Lubavitch school.
In Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no state income tax.
Right.
Okay, so that makes it easy. Okay.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Very good. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. I heard there's fire. You don't see the fires, do you?
What?
I heard there were fires in Yerushalayim.
Yeah, I heard something that too, but I don't know where they are.
Yeah, you don't smell it, you don't see it. It must be
I
in
don't smell it. I don't see it.
I heard it was near the hospital.
Terrorists set those fires.
Okay.
What?
Okay. Stay safe. Okay.
Yeah, you too. Okay.
Yeah, have a good day.
Thanks. Yeah, you too. Bye.